Hi, I'm Maisie. Welcome to my final year forum. I hope you enjoy my final year forum. I did just want to say ahead of you guys seeing this that I'm aware a lot of my work is quite repetitive, and I think that's because I've had really awful artist block for the last 4 years, and I've had to keep making even when I didn't want to. So I think I've continued looking at a very similar subject in various ways, but I am aware that it is quite repetitive. Um, but yeah, here's a result of years of struggling to make art. Enjoy. I wanted to start with some more contextual work I made on my foundation course before uni, which was mainly based around ideas of the body in relation to religion, specifically Christianity. And although I'm not religious myself, I've always had a deep interest in religion. And, despite no one being able to prove for certain that there is or isn't a God, um, people are willing to dedicate their lives to it, to die for it, to commit acts of violence in the name of it. So I think that's a subject that, could be explored artistically. So here are some examples of the work I created exploring those themes. The first one is an angel, which depicts both a set of wings, but also the human anatomy of lungs and a spine, made using freeze-dried chicken feet. I created a sculpture that repulsed people, but also promoted their curiosity in this strange, unidentifiable, but still familiar sculpture. Next, I created a crucifixion, which is one of the most referenced subjects in art history. It's rarely depicted as it is, which is a grotesque and violent death. And that's not how I depicted it either, I am aware of. But I acknowledged it and reinterpreted it. And I wanted viewers to experience sort of increasing discomfort as their eyes were drawn, from an ornate gold crown to a bloody heart. I isolated all of the images, key components in very clinical cabinets, and I was pretty proud of that piece actually, and a lot of people really liked it, so that's good. And then I went to uni. I continued using chicken bones in my practice. That's what I sculpted the crown out of in that crucifixion piece. Um, I think initially I was trying to create a sense of movement and convince people of their beauty, because I think bones are beautiful and they're often looked at as objects that hold an absence of life, and I don't think that's a fair judgment on bones. I think bones are more than that. Okay, so I began to revisit my religious research, looking at martyrs and Roman Catholic saints who were killed in the name of religion or trying to protect their faith or whatever, but in seriously gruesome ways. Really horrific actually, like breasts sliced off, eyes gouged out, grilled alive, crushed alive, flayed alive, like you name it, and they were killed in that act. So there, what only I can assume were mangled bodies, were then ornately dressed in jewels and expensive fabrics and worshipped, and it's so weird, but it's so interesting. And I made two bone sculptures based on this research, which I painted and I repeatedly dipped both of them into latex. And the first one I approached as the stage of death, so it's bloody, or it looks bloody, and it sort of looks like it's caving in on itself. And then the second one I painted in with accents of gold, and it's supposed to be more ethereal and heavenly, I suppose. And I did it in more of a humanly shape, and I used a chicken spine to create that sort of symmetrical body that I guess we associate with our own. And then going into second year, I started making a lot of collage, and I wanted to create this effect that I think that the images of the martyred bodies makes me feel. And I think eventually they became sort of more anatomical than they did religious, and that's fine. It kickstarted a whole love of collage for me, my love affair with collage. And then there was lockdown hit, which I ended up, I had to spend all my time at home. I couldn't come into the studio for various reasons. So everything that I've made throughout the rest of second year and all of third year was all from my bedroom. I started reading a lot about medical discoveries in around the sort of 1400s. Before that, no one really knew what was beneath their skin or how any of it worked. But as people were discovering more, investigating more, they were publishing drawings of our anatomies. And flap anatomy was invented as a sort of way of people seeing the various layers within our bodies. And although actually some of the artists were not entirely true to life, and there in one of the images there was a devil's head on top of the woman's vagina. Typical, am I right? Anyway, in making my own collages, use Grey's Anatomy books and other sort of contemporary anatomical educational sources. So I've absolutely butchered those books, which my mum was not happy about. But, oops. But yeah, I can't include them all because I've done over maybe 20 or 30 of these. And they're all quite similar in composition. They all occupy the centre of the page in an organic shape. They all tend to have a sense of symmetry or intentional asymmetry. And my intention with these collages is to create an identifiable, like you recognise that it's bodily imagery and you recognise it as your own interior, but because they're collaged in like totally wrong, so there's different parts of the body are blended together, it becomes anything but human. It's more alien-like. It's like an imposter is what I see them as. But yeah, I found myself making too many of these and it was just too repetitive. And I was told to paste them onto boards and print them out really large. And whilst I wanted to do that, I didn't have those facilities in my bedroom, obviously. So unfortunately, I had to sort of leave that idea behind. And then the return of the bone. I started collaging directly onto bones. Creating these sort of votive-like objects, which actually were the body and showed the body, but were no longer animal or human. Sort of, in this weird in-between place. I did that on a jaw that I found as well. Still playing around with gold. Anything that I added gold to, I just associated with religion, apparently. I don't know why. I started using human-like things like teeth and tongues in some more small-scale sculptures that were using bones as well. Still working from my bedroom. I then made a series of teeth sculptures, which I cannot stress enough how fiddly and how much time and effort they took to make. And maybe they are more decorative than they are art, but that's not how I see them. I'm very proud of them, and I still am. But yeah, my tutor at the time wasn't very inspiring or encouraging. I think she put me down quite a lot, actually. And after seeing my teeth sculptures, she said that my work was forgettable. So as you can imagine, being locked in your room and being told that you're not good at what you're doing is a hard pill to swallow. But I was in the middle of writing my dissertation at that time, and I was really enjoying that. I wrote it on the artistic dialogue between nature, the nature of life and death, and the belief systems we require in order to confront our own mortality, which allowed me to explore themes that I was working with as well, to an even deeper level, which did nothing but good for my practice. It's great. I loved it, and I did very well, so I'm very proud of myself for that. The start of fourth year was the start of my X-ray obsession phase, where I started to collage using X-ray imagery, but I wanted to limit myself to only making like 5 of these, so I didn't get carried away like I did the year before. And I used the one of my collages as a base to print with, So I did screen printing, photo etching. I laid acetate prints of it over other collages. And although I don't think that I'm going to be pursuing any of those as a way of making, I'm proud and I'm happy that I tried it out, because stepping out my comfort zone is quite hard for me. Yeah, so my X-rays and my love for X-rays, I can't pinpoint it. I don't know what it is. I think it's probably because I dug up this image of my mum from 2008, which is an X-ray of her brain and her neck that I kept in my room for over 12 years, and got it out recently, and discovered it was sort of an internal portrait of her, with her details, like her name and her date of birth are next to it, and you can see her profile in it. So it's resonated quite deeply with me, because it provides a view of my mum that I will never be able to see except through this very medium. And it started this portrait that I created of her for Interim. I used various aspects of her personality as well, such as her love for cooking. And I don't want to go into too much detail on Interim, but I had a very positive crit and ended up creating something that was totally different to anything I've done at uni so far. Anything I've done, actually. And it was sculptural, and I think I've been working mainly two-dimensionally over my time here. So a lot of people commented on the X-ray and that not being visible, but you had to hold it up to the light to see it, and that was intentional, and it was sort of creating this interaction between the piece and the person looking at it. But moving forward from that, also someone drew it. Someone stopped, took time out their day and drew my artwork, which I was elated about, and I was too scared to go and talk to her, but I did take a picture of her, so it's up there somewhere. Moving forward, yeah, so the work of Maisie Cousins, who is a photographer, has really been inspiring me recently. I love her extremely tactile, almost sexual nature of her photographs. They're suggestive of bodies but don't depict any. And I'm trying to be more playful and less serious in my approach to art making, so I don't get too stressed over the next couple of months. And I've found that, yeah, changing the materials I'm working with regularly, but staying focused on the same subject, I've managed to create a breadth of experimental pieces, which has given me many ways that I can approach the degree show. So I've played around with blue roll, which has sort of medical connotations. I've laid it over X-rays and collages as if they were bodies, being prepped for surgery. And I've created watercolour series inspired by X-rays, incorporating very little colour or sort of accents of colour. Constantly, whilst painting them, I'm looking at CT scans or X-rays, and I noticed that the cross-section in the centre of that image, sort of round, cavernous shape, I had an urge to sculpt it. And, instead of sitting there trying to justify a reason for doing it, I was like, let's just do it. And a week later, I found myself sort of immersed in hundreds of tiny little clay balls, which, when put all together, are quite porous and bodily. And I've been painting them white to mimic that sort of cross-section of the scan. And the interior of them I painted black to really sort of deepen the cavernous nature of them. And I have intentions of photographing them dripping with viscous liquids, as well as maybe using them as an installation for the degree show. Although I'm sure, like most people, I'm not 100% sure what I want to do for it just yet. But I think I'm on track, and I'm just generally enjoying being in the studio more than I ever have. So that's a positive. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.